We witnessed the 10th Brics summit. President Cyril Ramaphosa says he's not worried that his cooperation with China will affect diplomatic relations with the U.S. China is currently facing a trade war with the U.S. after President Donald Trump imposed tariff hikes on Chinese goods being exported to the U.S. And those were some of the conversations coming from that summit. But at the beginning of the summit, we saw the Brics Business Forum that took place, and that was led by Dr. Iqbal, who now joins us from our Sea Point studio. A very good morning to you, Dr. Server.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the program this morning.
You must be really fatigued. Just how would you sum up the Brics, the 10th Brics Business Summit and the whole summit really, and what happened there?
Well, I think the summit was outstanding. It really sort of positioned South Africa in the Brics grouping as an equal partner. It was incredibly well led by our President Cyril Ramaphosa, and you could see the tangible benefits coming out of it, as well as the very deep cooperation between the various Brics countries. So at all levels, the summit was a success, and it's not just from myself, but from all of my colleagues that are the co-chairs of the business councils from the other 4 countries as well.
Yeah. You are the chair of the South African chapter of the Business Council. Just tell us what the role of the Business Council is.
Yes, I took over as president of the Business Council for the 5 countries in March of this year, and of course chair the South African chapter. The role is simply to summarize it in 2 main areas. Firstly, to facilitate business-to-business interaction between the 5 Brics countries as well as the regional countries. And secondly, to facilitate business-to-government interaction between the countries as well. And on top of that, we work very closely with the New Development Bank, which was initiated by the Brics Business Council. And we have 9 working groups that work together to facilitate both combination of trade and investment, in particular for us, into South Africa and Africa.
So in your view, were there any key investment outcomes coming from the Brics 10?
Yeah, there were a number of significant MOUs that were signed between the various countries. There was also a large investment that was mentioned by the Chinese. But most importantly, we have now put the basis, a very firm foundation for transactions to take place between the various 5 countries. We've also made it easier for us to access capital from the New Development Bank, made it easier for having visa-free travel between the various countries, which is about to be implemented. The establishment of our own rating agencies, seed bank, forest desertification, changes in the and investments into the green economy space. So yeah, many significant investments, which were all outlined during the summit in Sandton.
The Joburg Declaration goes into the realm of the summit and not necessarily under the Business Council. But how will it affect or impact your work?
Well, the Johannesburg Declaration does make reference to the Business Council, and President Ramaphosa specifically in his closing address at the summit actually referenced the Council and the good work that the Council was doing. The Council handed over the annual report, its annual report, which was compiled by 9 working groups and 25 council members, altogether about 300 people, to the 5 presidents on the last day of the summit. And of course, the Brics Business Council is very unique in that it is aligned very closely with government. And in fact, the Brics Business Council is the one business council that is appointed by the cabinet and by the president.
So you talk about the report that you handed in, and an ordinary South African watching now thinking, how do I benefit from the outcomes of Brics? What are the components? What's the composition of that report, and how does it speak to the South African?
Yes, of course, a very significant part of our role is to make sure that our country is able to have investment coming into it by having investment not just in large infrastructure projects or manufacturing, but also investment backing SMMEs and entrepreneurs. We're able to do two things. We're able to give opportunities for entrepreneurs, and we're also able to ensure that there are jobs created. Now, of course, if people want, they can access the annual report, which has been handed over to the presidents, on the Brics Business Council website. There are 9 working groups. The heads of each working group is also on the website, and they're welcome to contact them to get involved in the work of the Brics Business Council.
But just in trying to access those opportunities, and you've spoken about the websites, what kind of activities and activations are you going to be holding that aspiring business people, as you say, SMMEs, how can they interact with the council on an ongoing basis?
Well, there's a number of areas. The first thing is that we've recommended to the 5 governments that they have visa-free travel between the Brics countries. We've recommended that our entrepreneurs and our businesses should have better access to the markets, in particular, large markets such as China and India. Thirdly, in the agribusiness working sector, we have a number of agricultural SMMEs and organizations. In the infrastructure areas, we're looking at participating with a number of SMMEs to help with the investment and building of projects. And similarly, in all the other 9 working areas, such as the digital working group, economy working group, the deregulation group, the aviation group, manufacturing, we put a huge emphasis on industrialization of the South African and African economies, and to have investment coming in to achieve that. Our role is to facilitate all of this, and it's up to the business people, small, medium, and large business people, corporates, to actually use the opportunities and the foundation that we've created for them.
How would you respond to the concern that the work of the Business Council can sometimes duplicate the work of trade and industry?
No, I don't think that's true at all. On the contrary, the Business Council is very much aligned with the work of the Department of Trade and Industry, with the work of DIRCO, with the work of Economic Development, with the work of the Presidency. Our annual report, before it gets submitted, and this is the same for all 5 countries, we work very, very closely with the Department of Trade and Industry. And we make sure that every working group report, bearing in mind there's 9 working groups and more than 300 people, plus the 25-member council report from the 5 countries, is very aligned with the policies of our government. And so one of the hallmarks of the Brics Business Council is that it works incredibly closely with the Department of Trade and Industry. It is for that reason, some people have said that the Brics Business Council should in fact be appointed by business as opposed to government. I'm of the firm view that the current position where government appoints the Brics Business Council must remain so that there can be complete alignment between the positions of government and business.
How did you go about choosing the companies that participated in the first day Business Council? Companies such as Naspers already have a presence in countries like China. Was that important, that the companies who came through were companies who were already in the Brics countries?
No, not necessarily. It's not that you had to have a presence in the Brics countries. The first thing is that the Brics Business Council and the Brics Business Forum, the invitees are extended by both the Department of Trade and Industry, by the Brics Business Council and other ministries. And we focus principally on large businesses for the purpose of the Business Forum and Business Council. And these are large businesses not just in South Africa, but also large business on the African continent, because our counterparts from the other 4 Brics countries have brought with more than sort of 50 to 100 corporations out of the 450 that attended that are exceeding $10 billion. So the idea is for us, of course, as South Africa, in particular, to use the BRICS Business Council meeting to attract investment into our country. And in this regard, we had a special investment session, which was also where we hosted the presidential envoys. We had the Minister of DTI, Rob Davies, speaking. And the idea is by attracting investment into South Africa and Africa, we're able to create jobs for our people and opportunities for our entrepreneurs to participate in the African economy as well as in the BRICS economies.
You say you've handed it over to the President, but please unpack the annual report for us. What are the important takeaways from it?
Well, we did in fact release a very extensive media statement on the annual report, but I will just highlight a few of the areas, but it's quite extensive and it's at least more than 100 pages. So the key thing is that we've focused on deregulation. So what we've said to the 5 heads of state and the 5 governments is that we want visa-free travel between the 5 BRICS countries, especially for business people and entrepreneurs. The second is that we want harmonization of the standards in relation to regulations and IP, etc. The third is that we want to make it easier to have investment into the 5 BRICS countries and easier between business and government and an alignment of policies in these areas. The fourth is that we've emphasized that the new development bank needs to put a greater proportion of its funding into South Africa and Africa, which the president of the bank committed to publicly in his address to the 5 heads of state.
Dr.
The fifth
Server,
thing is that we've asked for a
right
ratings
there.
agency
Dr.
which
Server?
can also rate the debt, the sovereign debt, the debt of SOEs and the country debt in the 5 countries. Then on a different level, we've asked for the seed bank to be formed between the 5 BRICS countries, and the reason for that is that the seeds are very expensive because it's dominated by companies that are in the US, and then also
Dr.
forestry
Server?
decertification. On the green economy side, we've asked for technology transfers between the 5 BRICS countries. On the digital economy side, we've asked for a common e-commerce platform, but protecting our industry, as well as for transfer of technology so that we're able to compete principally with American companies. But if you read the detail of our annual report, you'll see all of this.
I'm going to have to thank you for your time, but as you know, we have another big developing story in Zimbabwe, and we're going to have to leave it here. But thank you so much for your time. Dr. Server is the president of the BRICS Business Council, and just wrapping up the recently completed BRICS 10 summit that took place in Sandton. Blaine?